related topics for several presentations now, several months. And in many cases, it's been fairly theoretical. And what's really exciting is that Mike and the team at Wyndham have put this into action. They've partnered with Mobi to build an MCP server. And today they're going to talk about what they're doing on their journey, how they built this MCP server with Mobi, and in particular, how it relates to interactions with some of the popular LLMs like Claude and ChatGPT. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn things over to Mike and Andrew. Super excited to have you both on the call, and we're all super eager to learn from you guys now that you've done it in production. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt. All right, perfect. Okay, Andrew, you're good to go.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you guys all for inviting us to present. And yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting conversation today. The work with Wyndham getting the MCP app and then sort of its extension into MCP apps and ChatGPT apps is really an exciting surface and I think a big change coming to hospitality in general. So really excited to have a chance to present. So in terms of what we're going to cover, we're going to look at why Wyndham built the MCP server, how we built it, do a little bit of a live demo, and then talk a little into the future. So to start off with, this is sort of the talk summarized in one slide. Discovery we know is really moving into AI conversations, right? An ever increasing number of users are starting their travel searches at an OpenAI prompt or at a Claude prompt. And we're seeing that traffic also when it comes to our client sites is, sort of a very high quality. So I think the question then becomes, how do we, sort of get more traffic? How do we get more visibility in those spaces? And MCP we really look at as kind of the practical first step on which all of this is built. And I think the core piece here is that it's not an AI experiment at this point. Like this is now, a real channel that is growing at a real clip, and we need to kind of do the work to make sure that we're in front of it. And the direct distribution is a substantial portion of the total mix in this new environment. And the good news is it's very easy to put up and in place. If you've already got a website, if you've already got a mobile app, if you've already got really anything that's putting your existing availability and your existing content out onto the internet, the capacity to tie into that and then build these MCP interfaces and app interfaces on top of it is quite straightforward.
And so I always get the question of why now? Why has Wyndham been so bullish on setting up an MCP and why is this the right time? And I think the simple answer to it is we just want to meet our customers where they are, wherever they want to search for travel. We want to be there, represent our hotels, make sure that the data for those hotels and content descriptions, availability and rates are the most accurate that they can be. And also embrace the idea of AI becoming the center in how we find future travel inspiration and planning. And it does completely change that whole experience. And anybody who's played with it, and I'm sure all of us on this call has, it is incredible how we can take leisure travel that may have taken us days and countless Google searches, and through human conversation, be able to really narrow in on places to travel, places to go that meets your intentions, that meets your needs, expectations, experiences, and sometimes find destinations that you wouldn't have thought of. And so the challenge for us is how do we connect into these LLMs to bring that data in to create those experiences? And Andrew covered it really well. MCP is just the start. And I think in the beginning, it was hyped up a little too much in thinking that, oh, once you're connected, all the work is going to be done. And it really is just the beginning point. And what we'll see once the connections are made is that you're able to iterate on top of those connections rather quickly. And we're going to talk a little about that. AEO and GEO still has relevance, and the reason it does is if we think of how the searches will evolve inside ChatGPT as a good example. When our app is live and it's submitted, we're just waiting for them to turn it on. If a guest connects that that app and they search for a Wyndham hotel, they'll get our content. They'll have that full Wyndham experience. They'll be able to book through us via a link, and eventually it will be within the app. But if they're not searching for a Wyndham hotel and they're shopping, we still need a way to match our hotels to the intentions of the shopper. And it's those unbranded searches where people are putting all of the things that they want and that they need to do in their search. And we need to have the data available to the LLM so that it can match it to our properties. And that means that some of the content and data specific to hotels we don't have today. We just don't collect it. And so it's gonna challenge us to mature that. It also is going to challenge us in how we merchandise it to an LLM. They don't look the same way as a scraping bot, did for search in the past. And so this is why the foundational part is so important. And by having an MCP connected, you're able to actually speed up your GEO maturity because you can use that as a way to test some prompts, see how you merchandise, see what gets pulled over. And then you can continue to iterate on that for unbranded searches where it's going to rely solely on your GEO visibility. Go to the next slide. And so I think the simple of the strategic bet is we don't have a crystal ball, and so we're all making bets right now, and we don't know how this is going to completely evolve and how quickly it's going to evolve. Will we be in a place in 2 years' time where it's all on your edge device and you're using an agentic AI on here and it's doing all of your booking for you, and then it's connecting to these things agent to agent? Does it just completely replace what we're seeing today and we end up having something else in 3-4 years' time? We don't know. But that's why you need to make the bets and start building the foundation now. We're doing our replatform, working with Mobi to bring in intent-driven search as part of our new mobile and web platform that will also be optimized for GEO. It's why we connected into Claude as a great testing ground as our first place to connect. And we're using that to really drive a lot of tests and a lot of learning and just accelerate the way we mature. And we'll continue to work with Google and with OpenAI, and then whatever other LLM presents itself as an opportunity for us to bring these experiences to our guests. So it's going to be a bunch of bets. They're just not real expensive bets. They're very calculated and they all kind of support and lean on each other. Next slide, Andrew.
Yeah, no, and I think the point around expense is a good one. I think certainly at Mobi, we think a lot about growing and learning with our customers as well. And I think that's a key place is like to not make these huge expensive bets, but make them equivalent in value to sort of the learning that you're getting. And so to that end, we think a lot about, how do you actually build this in a way that kind of matches that? So at Mobi, we generally run 3 work streams in parallel at day one because the faster we're able to get this out, the earlier people are able to get the learnings, and also sort of the lighter a lift it is for everybody. So the first piece we work on really is tool definition, designing the MCP schema so that when an LLM calls our servers, it has everything that we need. I think this is a key point, and we'll dig into it further later, but how you actually design those initial tools also really defines both the functionality of your MCP server and what types of queries you can support, but also very much what types of learning you can get. A poor definition of your MCP tools can leave you blind to what your customer was really looking for. And if you handle it the wrong way in terms of definition too broadly, you can also just be handing back sort of untargeted answers to the user. Like we really need to be building these tools in a way such that if an LLM reaches out to an MCP server, that what they're getting back is better than what they otherwise would have. Second work stream we focus on really is the data modeling. So we're pulling in data from Wyndham's property data, tying into their APIs, and we have on our back end a kind of an ETL pipeline that's basically organizing all of that data into a consistent format such that we can talk from data that's been scraped from the website, we can talk from data that's pulled in through the APIs, pull that all into one place that can then be served out through the MCP. Then the third piece is really working, in this case with Wyndham, on the product and operations teams to figure out exactly what business rules are going to sort of drive the recommendations that come out of the MCP server and the requests that go into it. But all in all, this ends up being about a 4 to 6 week, sort of total lift to get out the door. And ultimately, as it should be, much of the actual sort of time spent is around QA and testing and sort of problem definition. It's much less in the actual lift and development of it.
And what I'll add to this one, Andrew, is because it's foundational, as the user search criteria starts to become more sophisticated, meaning they're looking for data that we just don't collect today, we'll be able to bring that data in and curate it in behind our MCP so that it gets fed into the LLMs as well. So even if we don't have it necessarily on our brand.com, we can still bring that data in. Another way to kind of think of how you could supplement that would be PR communications and branding documents, FAQs, things like that. We can bring those in so that it also gets fed out and becomes available to the LLM. And the whole purpose of that is really just to drive more matches to those intentions. The more that you can hit, the more likely that you're going to qualify for that rank and get listed.
No, I think that's exactly right. And so what does this look like from a sort of overall, technical layout? On the client end, it's really existing brand systems. On the whole, very few changes need to be made to those existing systems to bring this live. And then what's happening is we're bringing a platform that's handling the ingestion. All of the core infrastructure is serverless, so there's relatively little, sort of processing cost that's built onto this. A thing that Mobi does in its platform that's different than maybe another provider would do there is we're also putting some AI logic and tooling inside of the MCP server. So like a very basic way to go forward is just to have your MCP server directly on top of APIs and maybe on top of a static content store. But as you'll see when we kind of get to tool definition in a minute, in order to be able to support richer questions and sort of incentivize the LLM to give the Wyndham MCP the maximum data from the user that it can, we need to be able to support richer queries as well. And so we set up behind that MCP interface some AI augmentation in order to be able to fully parse the user's intent. And then from there, we have integration into Cloud and to ChatGPT. Increasingly that's MCP apps. We'll see a little bit of that in the demo as well. And then, the other really big piece, and it's sort of tacked on here at the end is ops, logs, analytics, and iteration. But I think to Mike's earlier point, this is a huge, really part of once you have the infrastructure in place is getting those learnings, seeing what people are asking, and then, in fact, updating all of the business rules and everything else in an iterative fashion to be able to say, oh, we actually need weather data, or we actually need, this property feature that we didn't previously know because people are asking those types of questions. And so I think it's really cool to see the learnings that we get as you start to see questions coming in and seeing that feedback so that the next time the question is asked, the answer is better. So that brings us over to the tool definition. I think this is deceptively simple in a lot of ways. But I'd really kind of highlight two aspects of the overall tool definition here. The first is user preferences, and you'll see that when we're taking in user preferences, or actually, sorry, I should explain a little bit more. The MCP tool here is really telling the LM what to pass to the Wyndham MCP. And so, I think you need to think of the definition of these tools as really sort of a fundamental product design. Model reads the descriptions, it reads the constraints, it reads the schemas that you're asking for, and it also reads any usage guidance that you give it. And if those are vague, if they're incorrectly sort of defined, you're going to get the right or the wrong question at the wrong time from the LLM. The LLM looks at the data coming back and kind of goes, that MCP server isn't that useful. And if that happens time and time again, you end up sort of in a situation where it's less likely that the LLM is going to reach out to that. Whereas if you have the right tool definitions, you get the right answer in front of the user, and the LLM sees that when they send users into, be it that, MCP app or be it, just the direct MCP text interface that they get good answers out. That's, reinforcement training to the LLM over time to sort of say when we send users down these paths, they have good outcomes and they keep sending them down. And so that's really, how we kind of think about how do you manage these. And we spend a lot of time getting it right. With the user preferences field that I was just mentioning, it's a free-form text, so the user can actually push, or the LM can push the user's query into there of, I want a pet-friendly hotel with a pool near downtown. And on the back end, as we were talking about before, our MCP servers have, additional LLM connectivity on the outside of that, so that we're able to take that free-form filter, which means that we're able to get that sort of richer learning about, that somebody wants both a pet-friendly hotel and a pool, record that into analytics, but then also we're able to parse that into, sort of the actual data structures that underlie the MCP server, sort of the core Wyndham data, and make a good request such that when we surface up hotels inventory to the user, it complies with those specific filters, so that we're actually handing back a pet-friendly hotel, or we're actually handing back a hotel with a pool. And that capacity to kind of get those rich answers out in front, as well as the capacity to actually parse them and have those sort of translate into business logic, is a key portion of this tool design. Another aspect as we go forward that we think a lot about here is just on the pure security pieces. A nice thing that we found with Wyndham, and I think it's a design pattern that I would recommend to everybody at this point in time, is to really build their MCP on top of existing public data. So on top of what's exactly on your website, on top of the APIs that are powering their website, so that you aren't having to have a new round of conversations about, what should or shouldn't be available. And I think it also makes the initial connectivity that much more straightforward. That said, we also wrap a lot of what we're doing with MCP around a security architecture to be able to see what's coming in, make sure that there's no data leakage that shouldn't be occurring, and simultaneously also protecting internal systems from, sort of massive volume increases and things of that sort. So I think with that, we can maybe actually go into a couple of quick demos if that works. So let me just pull up, switch the interface here.
And while Andrew's bring that up, so we started in Anthropic Claude. In order for you to activate our connector, you have to go in to a licensed version of Claude and go and enable that connector. Once it's enabled, you can do branded or unbranded searches for hotels, and it will pull from our connector unless you specify otherwise. If you have multiple hotel connectors, once this continues to evolve, you would get multiple brands, represented in your search if it's unbranded, or you would get brand specific if you mention a brand. So it's going to continue to evolve as user adoption evolves as well. So very similar to how I would describe Alexa and adding different audio sources, Spotify, radios, Sirius, etc. You can pick which ones you want to hear, or you can let it grab from any of them when you request the music to play. It's going to be pretty similar in the future here.
Yeah, and so you can see here in the connectors, I've just got the Wyndham Hotel connector live. So now when I pop in a query and run this out, we'll see, the LM understands the question, and then it understands what tools it has around hotel availability. It's actually reaching into Wyndham Hotels, and so now this is actually connecting into the Wyndham MCP server, then reaching into the live APIs at Wyndham to be able to surface real-time pricing and availability. So this, 240 a night or 203.40 a night, the total price, including tax and everything else, all of that coming through, all of the ratings, all of the business logic. This is all sort of pieces that have been defined with Wyndham around what we want to show in this type of list. So that comes through very, very cleanly. And so this is sort of what's live right now. But I want to show as well a little bit of what's coming in terms of just to show how quickly, in the 6 weeks from when this went live to to now, ChatGPT apps obviously have been there. Claude has come out and said that they were going to support MCP apps. That's now become a universal standard. So the MCP apps and ChatGPT apps are basically converging into one thing that at some point in time we'll just call MCP apps that really give a brand control over not just the data that's coming through to the LLM, but also aspects of the UI. So I'm going to put this on a demo mode right now so that you guys can see a little bit of that live. We'll be going live later this month on both Claude and then a ChatGPT app. We'll be going live with Wyndham as well at that point in time. We can take the exact same query. Now we're sending it to a new place.
And just keep in mind, as Andrew noted, this is the test environment here. And so this is not in GA yet, so it's not searching in the production model of Claude. So there may be some little nuance
Yeah,
of
it's a little slow and it's pulling from a test data set that we have with Wyndham. So my guess is you're going to get, oh, all right. The team is, I told them we were doing a demo and so they cleaned up some of the data that was here. So that's great. So you can see here now, rather than just a text output, you're getting a fully sort of built out UI. So you've got the carousel, you can see these pieces here. All of the hotels and their pricing is realized on the map. And this whole space is brand controllable. So there's a lot of visual customization that you can do around the branding there. And then when you go to view all, you can actually get into a full screen mode that again gives you opportunity to both, highlight the individual properties as well as highlight the brand. And so all of this is occurring right inside of the LLM surface. So the user isn't clicking out to a website. Once they get to search rooms or later down the booking funnel, that will open up into a website and kind of take them out of this experience. But you get a pretty rich experience, really capacity to highlight the specific properties. And you can see my query had a pool, and so actually there's business logic here that we're looking at the images, and because the user asked for a pool, when we click into a hotel, if there is an image of the pool, it's pulling that forward first. We asked for pet friendly, and I don't think we found any catalog images of pets on property, but if there were, those would surface as well.
Yeah, I
So
think the
that's
part that's exciting on this is the prompt that Andrew used is a very traditional search prompt, which is great for us to just demo. But that sophistication is going to change. So imagine searching because it has lat, longitude, and map displays. Imagine if my search was, I want to be off Disney with a free shuttle in between Disney and Universal. I want these things at the hotel near a Mexican restaurant that I could walk to, etc. These are the types of things that people will start to layer in to their searches. And so by being connected, we're able to interact with our hotel data as we add more and more of that data logic in to be able to narrow down results that better meet the intention of the traveler. And so it's a really cool experience. So then being able to interact through conversation about these properties. You could ask questions about the list of properties that were displayed. You could narrow it down. You could dive into them. You could ask, how safe they are. Things like this that people may be curious about. You're able to do that. You could filter it by rating. There's a 2.4 star at the top. You could say no more than 4 star, for example, and be able to narrow the search down. Don't do that in case we don't have any. I'm
No,
kidding.
no, but I mean, it's a very good point. There's a phenomenal amount of richness that's going to be brought here. And also because this is pulling into the LLM environment, there's also kind of the capacity for all of this data to feed a much broader set of queries, right? If somebody's doing a full travel plan, they've got their flights already picked and they have their conference that they're attending, you can then ask, find me, the three most convenient hotels, and it can reach into the Wyndham MCP and actually make that coordination piece as well. So even if the initial portal or the initial sort of start of the travel journey isn't with the hotel, it can still actually pull into this rich pool of data and really augment all aspects of the travel search.
Let's just to be cognizant of time. Maybe we can jump to slide 12, Andrew.
Yep, hold on.
You touched on it a little bit. Is there any more that you want to wrap up on that slide?
So yeah, I think here, really just to summarize, and I encourage you to play around with the Wyndham MCP and in the near future, the MCP app and the ChatGPT app. What we really found is that like while you get a lot of cool visuals available to you in the app world, that the real key part in many ways really is not the flashy stuff. It's like the like making sure that you have the right data, making sure that you have the right business logic, and then just a ton of QA. Like there's a lot of early, particularly like ChatGPT apps out there at the moment that I think are not at the level of quality that sort of befits the properties and the content underneath them. And I think that's important because fundamentally, like the LLMs aren't just software, right? Like they're constantly learning on their own interactions. So unlike Google that just publishes a new ranking algorithm and that's how everything sort of shows up, the LLM is ranking based on the behaviors that it sees. So if we send people to bad apps, if we send them to bad MCP servers and they bounce, the LM slowly begins to learn, oh, these apps aren't very good, or this MCP server isn't very good. And over time, they aren't going to recommend those to the users. And I think that's certainly true at the micro. And I have, concerns that that's true at the macro as well. Like, is it good to reach into a whole hotel's direct MCP server? Like, we want that answer to be universally yes, because if it is universally yes, then the LLMs will first and foremost, when they're looking at a particular hotel recommendation that they're making, will reach out and see, does that, specific hotel brand have an MCP server? Do they have an app? Can I direct the user there? If the users have a bad time and a bad experience in those initial apps, the LMs may be less likely to do that. So I think there's a real urgency in a lot of ways to making sure that we're out in front of this and providing good experiences to the users, even in this learning phase, because it's a learning phase for us, but it's a teaching phase for the LLM.
Maybe we can just jump to the next slide, Andrew, and so
Yeah,
we can keep
absolutely.
moving. I unfortunately have to get going, so I'm going to wrap these next two slides up. This was interesting news that we heard from OpenAI that they were going to walk back from their checkout experience. It wasn't necessarily new news. There's been signals for a few months that this was going to be a case. We at Wyndham here have been under the assumption that they were going to move to an app focus just based off of some dialogue that we had. And so this, in my mind, really just continued to reinforce the need for us to do this now. Apps create a bit of a level playing field, right across all of the inventory providers, whether it's direct to brand, direct to hotel, through a travel agent, etc. And so we all have the opportunity to make the experience in an app the best experience that it could be. And in my mind, that is around data. It's around how you merchandise it. It's around the small things like descriptions and room nuance and location nuance, etc. That's really going to drive that experience up because it's going to match more of the intents of the user. So I saw this as a positive signal when they made the shift. If you go to the next slide, Andrew, and you can skip past this one as well. Next one. And so I really see it more as good news than bad. And although we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know how this is going to evolve, OpenAI tends to be a little unpredictable in what they're doing. So could they go back to trying to do this in the future? Maybe. But it did seem a little coincidental that Amazon invested 50 billion at the same time that they made this decision. So maybe they're going to make a decision to stick with this strategy. And I think in any case, we're just going to lean into it anyway. It's one of those bets that we're making and we're learning from it. And so whether or not it's here to stay or it evolves into something else, there's enough learnings to get out of it that it's worth the investment. Next slide. Do you want to wrap us up, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, from our perspective, it's a question of like, what do you do now? And I think really like the lift isn't heavy, the cost isn't much, and sort of what's potentially at play is so great that we think it makes a lot of sense for brands to be strongly considering getting an MCP server in place, getting it connected into cloud, getting it connected into ChatGPT, and really starting to provide paths for these LLMs to connect directly into to first party data. We think a very fast follow to that is not just letting the LLMs connect, but letting the users connect because user behavior is really, one of the key aspects that the LLM is training on. So getting those ChatGPT apps in place, getting the MCP apps in place, and even there, an initial version of it can be good and powerful, but not an overwhelming project for your design team. You can work with a partner like Mobi, you can work with other partners to build these pieces up and fundamentally get something in place that's good, solid, works, and gets you those learnings, gets the LLM sort of training on the idea that they can send people directly to hotels. And then I think, later this year, we're going to start to see more of that agentic booking piece. I think in many ways, OpenAI is saying, hey, we're going to support commerce inside of our LLM, but that commerce is only going to be supported inside of the apps, creates even more sort of a push towards get an app there, get it in place, because, at the end of the day, the LLM doesn't want to send somebody clicked out back to a website to book. In OpenAI's case specifically, they don't want you to click out because then you're suddenly in Chrome, and who knows whether or not that Chrome has AI browsing turned on. They're not going to willfully send people to Gemini if they can avoid it. And so I think brands that have both an app and an app that's commerce enabled stand to benefit, greatly from being well aligned with OpenAI's incentives in the near terms. And so, we're really excited to help people cross that bridge as well, and just excited to see the industry start to cross that bridge themselves. So
Yeah, I
yeah, I
think we
think
can
so.
wrap this one up quick, Andrew, because
Yep,
we covered a lot of it.
absolutely.
I do unfortunately have to drop off and head to the airport. Andrew's going to stay and do some Q&A. If there's any questions for me that didn't get answered, Sandy's going to keep a list, and I'm happy to either follow up direct or follow up to the group. But thank you so much for the opportunity to share. This is really our time to be able to bring more direct bookings in our hotels to really enhance that user experience in this new age of AI, and to lean in on making sure that we're bringing the best data, the best inventory, the best information about our hotels as we possibly can closer to the guest, and this is allowing us to do that. So thank you so much, Andrew. It was a pleasure to do this with you, and apologies that I have to
Yeah,
kind of rush out the door. But
totally
you guys are in
understand.
great hands. Thanks all.
Thanks for organizing it, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Andrew. This was super enlightening. Great to see MCP in action after all of the conversations we've had around MCP and to actually see what this process looks like. I'm going to stop the recording.